Don't sing if you want to live long. They have no use for your song. You're dead, you're dead, you're dead. You're dead and out of this world. You'll never get a second chance. Plan all your moves in advance. Stay dead, stay dead, stay dead. Stay dead and out of this world. Run fast, don't stand in the sun. There's too much work to be done. You're down, you're down, you're down. You're down and out of this world. Don't ever talk with your eyes. Be sure you compromise. You're dead, you're dead, you're dead. You're dead and out of this world. Hear the unloved weeping like rain. Guard your sleep from the sound of their pain. Long gone, long gone, long gone. Long gone and out of this world. When you smile and it tears your face, it's time for the inhuman race. You're down, you're down, you're down. You're down and out of this world. Now your hope and compassion are gone. You've sold out your dreams to the world. Stay dead, stay dead. Stay dead, stay dead, and out of this world. Hello, and getting cut off my own creepy antlers. Happy Halloween! How very exciting to be coming to you from the Pater's house here in Falmouth, on this most auspicious Allantide, as we say in Cornwall. Very exciting indeed. I'm really excited about the stories and songs I've got to share with you tonight. We've done lots of creepy Halloweeny things because obviously Halloween is about the dead and the dying as well as lots of other mystical things, and I really like it when feminists get hold of those situations and you get a twist on the role that women usually play in those kind of stories, and they get to play quite a different role in the stories I'm going to tell you tonight, which is really fun. They come from work that we've had done over the last few years, that we would have done on our living literature walks, so out and about site specific stuff, and one is a brand new commission that you will be the first people to hear, which is really exciting. So drink wise, I hope you're here with me. I'm going for a different drink per story. The first drink is Here's to Kate Kerrow, who wrote this one. This is a kind of comforting autumnal brew, a kind of blackberry and gin kind of thing. Thank you very much for all of the advice that I got on Twitter for cocktails. They were excellent. I couldn't choose, and so in the end I just went spirits. Spirits seems like the right thing to drink at Halloween, so that's what you're getting. So push hearts, cheers to you. This one is for Kate Kerrow and her wonderful story that I shall read you now. He was known as Mr. S. Barber. The S stood for Stephen. It was difficult to say if he had friends or relatives. Certainly Erica had never seen them. They had lived opposite one another for 4 years. He lived at number 14, she at number 13. The flats were spacious inside, but the hallways were cramped and the corridors tapered and narrow, so sometimes she would have to squeeze past him. Once, however, he had opened his front door just as she opened hers. To an onlooker, it would have seemed as though he'd timed it. He had looked down at her legs. "Your stockings are laddered," he said. She said nothing, watched him watching her. As usual, his smell was invasive, musty, damp, the unmistakable scent of urine. Natasha lived at number 11. Natasha's afternoon had been the same as every other afternoon. Now, as usual at this time of day, she bent over and vomited into the toilet as quietly as she could. It was the third purging of the day. She must be quiet, quieter. She had completed her food diary, like the doctor said. She'd been regimented, controlled. She tried to be honest, at least with him, about when she was purging. She'd tried harder than she'd ever tried to be well. to stop punishing herself. In her heart, she felt a yearning for wellness. But her stomach wouldn't obey. However hard she tried, she simply could not get her food to hold inside her. Helena was having her 4th baby in a month's time. She was exhausted. For the last 40 months, she'd either been pregnant or giving birth. Just virtually no time in between, for as soon as one popped out, another one seemed to arrive inside her. The doctors were surprised at her level of fertility. She was no longer a young woman. Sometimes she found it hard to remember how the pregnancies could have happened. Sometimes her husband found it hard too. That morning, her friend had visited her for coffee. Helen didn't want visitors anymore. She didn't have time. Her 3 babies would all lay at her feet, parasitical, demanding more and more from her, all with their different needs, until she felt tears well up in her eyes and the awful desire to throttle. That morning she reached breaking point. She has complained furiously about her 4th pregnancy to her friend. She had been honest. If she wasn't honest to someone, she felt she would burst. She said she didn't like motherhood. She wished she could be alone, free, somewhere far away in the world. Her friend had looked at her disapprovingly. Rather than replying, she'd stared down at the babies loitering on the floor, unattended to. "You shouldn't dress the little boys in pink, Helena," she had said. Helena lived at number 12. Every new pair of tights that Erica had bought for the last 4 years had been laddered within a moment of her wearing them. She would take them new from the packet, hold them carefully with her trimmed nails and ring-free fingers, pull them gently up her legs. They would hold fine. She would walk in them from one side of the room to the other, checking they were fully intact. They always were, but as soon as she forgot about them, the moment she did that, a long ladder would appear as if from nowhere on the back of her left calf. It was the same shape and size and location every time. This year, a different ladder began to form. This one went from the top of her right knee up her thigh. It started small, just 2 centimetres, but Erica soon realised, with every new pair of tights, it was getting bigger. It was growing. It had worked its way upward in a wayward line, moving to the centre of her inner thigh. One night in the darkness, she thought she saw glowing white marks on her legs. When she turned on the lights, they were gone, but she knew the shape of them. They were ladders, engraved into her skin, glinting and winking. Sometimes at night, Erica smelt a damp, musty smell, a stench of urine. When she turned on the lights, the smell was gone. Someone was done for, she knew. Her or him? Erica approached the problem the same way she approached other problems. She began watching and listening and making notes. Some weeks later at 9 p.m, as was usual for Mr. Barber, he had fallen asleep in front of the television, his fat stomach bulging out of his shirt, his breathing laboured. Erica crept up his stairs and opened the door to the right of the bathroom, entered his bedroom. She knew where to go now. She'd learnt a lot in the last few weeks about Mr. Barber, Mr. Stephen Barber. She lifted a box from under the bed. The rest of the room was dusty, dirty, damp. This box was clean. It was too often used to collect any residue. She opened it up, and inside she found 3 dolls. She knew they were there. She'd seen them with him, his collection. But it was the first time she had held them, seen them in the flesh. They each had strands of different human hair, and they were numbered 11, 12, 13, in red paint across their faces, where their eyes and mouth should have been. The first doll had a rope tied around its middle. The rope was so tight it almost cut the doll in 2. She sliced off the rope with her knife. She thought she had a gasp of breath. The second doll had another tiny doll within it. Erica took out the tiny doll and she thought she heard a faint, distant sigh. The third doll had 3 strands of her own hair. On the back of the left leg of the doll were 3 little pins, one on top of the other, and on the knee, more pins climbing up. Erica took the dolls downstairs in her arms, cradling them gently. She tiptoed past Stephen and closed the door to his flat behind her, slipping across the hall to her home. She wrapped the dolls in blankets and lit the fire. Placing all the dolls in front of the warm orange fire, she held them, she talked to them, she gave them each a big fat mouth. Then she made another doll, because she had been collecting things too. 2 days later, Stephen went looking for his dolls everywhere. Time passed. He noticed his hands were getting rather stiff. By Christmas, he could no longer clench his fingers into a fist. Erica kept tightening. Soon he had the same issue on his left hand. His hands had been too busy, Erica had decided. Far, far too busy. Sometimes Erica would let him use them again, release the wires about the doll's hands, but on those times he took advantage. He just didn't learn quickly. He was a disappointing student. So she'd tie him right back up again. She hadn't intended to take his voice, but when he came hissing and spitting to her door about sluts and whores who shouldn't mess with men like him but stay content in the kitchen, she changed her mind. 4 black crosses lay neatly across his mouth. She would keep him under review. Right. So I'm filming this, as I mentioned, in Falmouth, which is bang on the doorstep of Penryn, which is apparently the most haunted place in Cornwall. Vies probably for attention for that, but it's very, very haunted. Lots of local myths and legends. And the amazing Laura Trevail, L.H. Trevail, wrote this next story a few years ago for an amazing, we had some great contributions, so it was a lovely piece of work, mostly conducted in the pouring rain. We're not having that problem now, so that's a small mercy. I'm going to swap drinks for this one. This story binds together the idea of the local myths and legends with also the idea of local smuggling. Who knows if smuggling happened in Cornwall? Who knows if it didn't or not? But certainly there was times the Cornish didn't love paying tax on stuff they were going to end up having to hand over to the English or be taxed by the English one. So stories abound, let's say. So for this story, and in honour of L.H. Trevail, the awesome L.H. Trevail, I am moving on to a shipwreck brandy. Thank you very much. So that's the spirit for this one, and it's in the spirit of this one. This is the Jumper Outer. At the dinner table, Father disapproved. The young should not talk of the dead. I'm going to start that again because that was a Yorkshire accent. That's because in my dad's house, all my family from Yorkshire. We're looking for a Cornish accent because I'm actually doing a story about Penryn. What do we call it? Yeah, right. At the dinner table, Father disapproved. The young should not talk. Oh God, I'm still doing it. Okay. Literally couldn't get that right. So had to have a little pause, just do a little bit of accent work, have a little talk to myself. Here we go again. It is, I promise you, the same block of filming. It's just a second take. At the dinner table, Father disapproved. The young should not talk of the dead, even the old dead. It's not right. I pushed a bit of lamb around my plate until he looked annoyed, and then I said it tasted like the old dead. He clenched his jaw a moment. Then he laughed, one of his big, rare, roaring laughs like that can startle a whole room. He said, "Well, I raised you well, Molly, even if you're spiralling towards vegetarianism before you're even 19. You can stand up for yourself, even to your old man, more than I could do." I ate the nasty bit of lamb just because he'd cooked it. He said, "It's a job, I suppose. They pay you all right." "Above minimum." "Just." "That's something. They give you that outfit?" I adjusted the cloak self-consciously. "They let me pick something out." "And that's what you picked, is it?" I could feel the catches at the back of the corset digging into my skin as I nodded. To be honest, I was beginning to wish I'd chosen the elasticated one. Well, just you be careful, all right? Out there on your own. I won't be on my own for long. I have to hide around the corner of a building at the end of the tour, and when the group come round the corner, jump out with a rubber skeleton mask on, wave my hands about, and scream. And they pay you for that. Yes, it's a job, a real job, a jumper outer. They have them all over the place. They have them in Thorpe Park and Edinburgh and London Dungeon. Oh, and Buckingham Palace, I'm sure. The royal jumper outer. He's off again, laughing. I let him. It's good to see him happy. It's money, Dad, and we need it, and it might be kind of fun. And if I do all right, I could get to be one of the guides, and that pays a bit more, and you get to tell stories about the history of the place. He stops laughing. Stories and history, eh? You want to be careful of that. Telling things to strangers about what's ours. Then he laughs again. You'll be in that London dungeon quicker than you know it that way. Honestly, Dad works in IT. But sometimes he talks like he's all sailcloth and tarry barrels. I really don't know what he thinks he's trying to protect in this day and age. I wonder sometimes if that's how his parents talked and whether he's going to pass on to me. Maybe I'm more like my mum, but I'll never know that. She died when I was just a baby. I only get to carry half of my history with me. I tell him, don't worry, I won't tell the story of the secret cellar under our house, or the time my great-great-grandfather had to hide from the customs men for 3 days in a hollow tree and nearly died of hypothermia, or about the antique but working brandy still in the back of the garage. And I won't. It's a ghost tour. There's no ghosts in those stories. There's one ghost story in our family, and the guide will be telling that, but they'll be telling the legend, not how it actually happened. See, before I jump out at the end, this is what the group thinks is the big scare. The coach and the headless horses. It's a top local legend, according to Google. A carriage with darkened windows and silent wheels pulled by horses with soft feet and no heads. And if you look at it directly, it sucks you in and carries you away to the land of the dead. Of course, we only get a rickety racing trap and a pony with a bag on its head. But apparently, it looks the business. It's the theatrical scare of the tour. The audience can appreciate it and they can come around the corner, and then I jump out. Ha! For that, that's when they nearly pass out with surprise, and then they're done. And that's because that's what they came for. That little brush with the possibility of a brief gasping second that the creepy might be true after all. Then they can have a good laugh and a pint in the King's. The real story isn't so different, according to Dad. There was a silent coach, and the windows darkened with smoke, and you weren't supposed to look at it, but it wasn't a ghost. As the Kipling that didn't make exceedingly good cakes wrote, 25 ponies trotting through the dark, brandy for the parson, baccy for the clerk, laces for a lady, letters for a spy, and watch the wall, my darling, while the gentlemen go by. The poem always makes me feel tearful. It's kind of creepy, but it feels like family. Well, says Dad, bringing it back, at least you're not going out dressed like a tart to get hammered in Club Eye. That's right, Dad. I'm going out dressed in Victorian underwear and a red velour dressing gown to lurk on a street corner. Don't forget your skeleton mask. See you later. Love you. Ooh. Next time, I am going to pick a blouse buttoned to the neck, a big skirt with bustles, maybe even a housecoat, or maybe dressed like a man. It is freezing. I wish I was at Club Eye, but they don't serve hot soup or hot chocolate or a hot bath. When that pony comes round the corner, I'm just going to have to hug it. They're late. The guides got carried away, going on about a thought about timing. That happens, apparently. But on my first scare, really? It's nasty in this mask. I don't think it's new. It smells. At least my face is warm. Warm face, cold tits. That's not a saying. It really is bitter. I think the old story of great-great-grandpappy freezing half to death in that hollow tree. I think 3 days? I've been here 15 minutes round the corner from Bailey's country store. It's night, and there's the standby glow of the shop window, and there's street lights. It must have been pitch dark where he was, and probably full of spiders and bugs. I've never seen a hollow tree. They don't don't have them anymore, but they're in stories all the time. Maybe we cut them down, I guess. Everything's so bright now. I think of my father in his little office in the house, illuminated by the bright glow of the computer screens. All day he spends looking into that light. Maybe that's why people like me go on ghost tours. Get a taste of the old darkness, even if it's only on the inside. Maybe we're the hollow trees now. Sometimes I do feel a bit of a hollow tree. But I think it's probably just not really knowing what happened to Mum. Like, Dad won't talk about it. He says she got sick, but there's something really shifty about how he says it. And he hasn't kept any photographs of her. There's plenty of other photographs in the house of his own family. Going way back, there's his father looking stern and mean and his mother looking kind of cowed. There's his grandfather looking twinkly and sly next to a boat. Great-grandfather and his wife on deck chairs reading newspapers. And there's even a faded old blurry photograph of his father, old Frosty Balls himself, sitting proudly on a stack of barrels, sporting breeches, an ugly riding coat, and a grin to match my dad's. I think he keeps all the photographs up to give me a sense of my past, but he's missing half. He knows inside too, in his own dark hollow. I know it hurts him not to talk, but maybe it hurts him more to try. I'll ask him one day, properly and carefully, when I'm old enough to talk of the dead. The steam of my breath is coming out of the eye holes of my mask. That's going to look proper fright when I jump out, actually. That's going to be good. Oh, it's a bit nerve-wracking, this. Maybe this is how actors feel before they go on stage. I'm glad I don't have any of the lines other than, ah. Oh, I hope I don't mess it up and say boo or something. They said whatever I must do, I mustn't say that because it's naff. Maybe I'll just be compelled to say it because I'm not supposed to. That happens sometimes. Dad says it runs in the family. I think it might have something to do with what happened to Mum. I think she worked with computers too. Something important. It came up once because Dad got really angry because I said that computers were boring boy things. And I remember because he got shouty angry, which he doesn't do very often. I know he works really hard at that because his dad was shouty angry pretty much all the time and really mean to his mother as well. And he says he doesn't want to be like that. He says whenever he gets angry and just wants to calm down. I think he's pretty amazing, actually. But he says he's a feminist, and I don't know if a gruff old man can be, but maybe he is. Apparently, my mum was better with computers than he is, and most of the other guys he knows, and she had to be because of her job. He won't talk about it, but sometimes I can worm the odd clue out of him before he clams up. I think she found out something she wasn't supposed to know and maybe smuggled out that information. There's something brave about her. Something amazing and dangerous that Dad loves very much and has to hide. Them that ask no questions isn't told a lie. Watch the wall, my darling, as the gentlemen go by. Watch the wall. Don't say boo. Any minute now, the pony and trap is going to come down the road. And then I get ready for the group, and then I jump out. I pull the dressing gown around me for the little warmth it gives, and wait. Oh, but here it is now. Round the corner, slow, silent. It really does look the part. It's much bigger than I thought it would be. A full carriage, windows, everything, and two black horses. The whole thing's black as a Batmobile. And a spindly coachman sitting high at the front, gripping the reins of those two tall dark horses. I do not feel like hugging them. They've clearly been riding hard. There's a sheen of sweat on their charcoal flanks. Their hooves are bound in rough dark cloth, the same cloth my eyes expect to see covering their heads. But I can only see their necks, and then the hard black glitter of the sky with all its stars. The street and the shop lights are dim as a guttering candle in the face of such emptiness. The usual comfort of our familiar human time feels thin and flimsy, barely draped over our existence as it trotters off to get hammered. High on his perch, the lanky coachman turns slowly to look at me, with teeth as stretched and bare and huge as the horses should have been. His eyes are pale, fleshy tunnels leading much further back than the depths of his skull. He He looks upon me, shivering in my stupid Red Riding Hood cape and rubber mask. He is death, and the void, and the end of time. He breathes in, smelling my life, and I feel it yearning to leave me, to hasten to the end in a soft black carriage. I think of my friends, I think of my town and the life that I should have, and my father, who I love so much and will not leave all alone. I throw my arms in the air, and as loudly as I can, I yell, "Boo!" And death jumps. A tiny high-pitched whine creeps out of his mouth, and his spidery limbs tense in surprise and fear, dropping the reins and clutching the gauntness of his face. His recoil backwards on his high seat makes him lose his balance, and he vanishes over the back of the carriage with a muffled, bony clatter and a thud. Bloody hell! I mean, I'm not supposed to swear, but I wasn't supposed to say boo either, and that turned out pretty well. I look at the coach, standing silent and dark. The horses shift their feet, rattling their abandoned reins. Very carefully, I bend and peer beneath the coach wheels. The dark cloth pile that is death isn't moving. I look at the coach again. I look at its door. I could run. I could just run. And that would be the end of it. I look at the tiny brass bolt locking the door from the outside, locking other people in, perhaps on their ride to the land of the dead. I'm sure there's some kind of law against slipping this bolt and opening this door. But the metal is cold to the touch and slightly oily. It slightly moves even in my nervous grip. The door gapes open as I step back. A young man emerges, staggering, pale, staring eyes, long lank hair plastered to his head. He's wearing a rough shirt, torn muddy breeches, an empty sword belt and scuffed riding boots. Either his costume is a lot better than mine, or he is properly from the past. His breathing is light and wary. He starts when he sees me, reaching for his sword, flinching at its absence. He's very afraid, but there is defiance in his eyes. He says carefully, "Is this hell?" No, it's Penryn. I realise I'm still wearing the skeleton mask. I take it off to reveal my true face and almost certainly terrible hat hair. He stares a moment, looks around, tenses his jaw, and then quite suddenly laughs. A loud, shocking, open laugh, a laugh like my father. And then I see it. That look in the eye, the tilt of the head. Younger than in the photograph of Dad's office, but definitely, unmistakably, my great-great-grandfather, my own, very own old dead. But he looks achingly tired from the laughing and says, "I'm cold." He shivers and starts to move back towards the carriage, laying a pale hand on the door, raising a foot to climb back into the velvet dark. "No," I say. "No, you don't. You live. I know you live because I'm here. You get cold, but you don't give up and die. There's a photo of you in my dad's office, sitting on a pile of brandy barrels, smiling in your riding cloak." Very quickly, I unfasten the ugly costume cloak from around my neck and hold it out to him. "Here, put this on. It'll keep you warm enough. I know it." He says, "I'm dreaming this, aren't I?" "Sure, if that makes things easier for you right now, but you're still going to wake up in velour." He lowers his foot and steps from the door, taking the cloak and wrapping it round his own shoulders, just as a muffled rattle from behind the carriage lets us know that death is on the move again. Gloved, spidery hands grip the high seat, and the heavy head follows as the coachman climbs back onto his position. He looks a little more hunched, a trace of embarrassment, perhaps. My great-great-grandfather cowers behind me. I'm gripping the rubber skeleton mask like a trophy. Death regards us, then picks up the reins. I could just let him go. I could just stay here and protect my past, and that would be the end of it. The carriage will return to the land of the dead, and I will be safe. I take a deep breath and ask, please tell me about my mother. Death stops, blinking his tunnel eyes, 2 snakes' throats swallowing. He allows words to form behind his bare teeth and releases them as low, buzzing flies. Your mother's not with me, lass. Then he shakes the reins, and the headless horses silently draw the carriage away into their night. Beside me, my great-great-grandfather's form is beginning to fade back to its own time. He's barely more than a mist in a tacky cape. He whispers, headless horses? Now that's a good idea. With a rattle of wheels and hooves, the ghost tour, pony and trap rounds the corner at a pace. My cue. Automatically, I pull on the skeleton mask back over my head and get ready to give the tour group the fright of their lives. I wonder how many of them will see my ancestral ghost fading beside me. They'll be so busy screaming and laughing. Probably none. Inside the mask, my mind is racing. So this is what my father's been protecting all this time. My mother, with her bravery and her knowledge and her danger, is still alive. And Dad's been carrying that secret the whole time on his own. But he doesn't have to anymore, because I'm old enough now to talk of the dead. Now we can smuggle our secret together and not be hollow trees anymore. So I'm very excited to share with you this last poem. I used to do lots of ridiculous goth-style cliff-top walks with my lovely friend Rosie, talk about our mutual love of Robert Smith, and quote this poem to each other over and over. It's After Death by Christina Rossetti, and the brilliant Christina Li has set it to music for me to finish this salon with. So please come again. I have a special on the 25th of November, which is the International Day to End Violence Against Women, because, you know, I like to keep things light. And I also have a really interesting, I think, it's a Christmas special on the 16th of December that's going to have, I don't know if you saw our campfire event, but it's going to have Matt and Shaz back with me, maybe some other tricks up my sleeve as well, maybe this bit of digital tomfoolery. I think it should be really fun. So join me for a live streamed Christmas event as well. Here we go. A bit of Christina Rossetti. Thank you very much for coming, and happy Halloween. The curtains were half drawn, the floor was swept and strewn with rushes, rosemary and may lay thick upon the bed on which I lay, where through the lattice ivy shadows crept. He leaned above me, thinking that I slept, and could not hear him, but I heard him say, poor child, poor child. And as he turned away, came a deep silence, and I knew he wept. He did not touch the shroud or raise the fold that hid my face, or take my hand in his, or ruffle the smooth pillows for my head. He did not love me living, but once dead.